The United States and Israel's joint attacks on Iran have set off retaliatory missile strikes across the region, raising alarm about a wider conflict, despite marathon negotiation sessions this week aimed at averting war. Today, at the United Nations Security Council, there was an emergency session to address the strikes, known as Operation Epic Fury, after French President Emmanuel Macron called for an urgent meeting. Writing on X, quote, "The ongoing escalation is dangerous for all. It must stop." Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney voiced support for, quote, the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, but ruled out military involvement. Trump's remarks on the intended end state of the war are contradictory and seemingly ad hoc. In his pre-taped address released early Saturday morning, the president appealed to the Iranian people to oust the regime, telling him this is the moment for action. But this afternoon, Trump told Axios, quote, "I can go long," or, quote, "end it in 2 or 3 days," which makes it almost impossible for allies to determine the U.S. plan and contribute to peace and stability. Joining us now, Robert Malley, lecturer and senior fellow at Yale School for Global Affairs. He served as special envoy to Iran from 2021 to 2023 and was the Middle East advisor to President Obama, who helped negotiate the Iran nuclear deal in 2015. Also with us is Ambassador Michael Froman, president of the Council on Foreign Relations and former U.S. trade representative under President Obama. So, Robert, I'll start with you. How did we get to this point where diplomacy failed to prevent these joint attacks?
I mean, it depends how far you want to go back, but there's one obvious starting point, which is President Trump's decision in 2018 to tear up the nuclear deal that had constrained and had met the objectives of ensuring that Iran could not try to develop a bomb without the U.S. knowing way ahead of time and being able to take steps to prevent it. So Iran's nuclear program was in a box. It was under very strict constraints, and for no reason other than the fact that President Trump decided he didn't like the deal, he tore it up. And that set up this escalatory chain, which is where we live now. You could also focus on the negotiations that have taken place over the last several weeks, which by almost every account were on the verge of producing a deal that would have been even more constraining, even more strict in terms of Iran's nuclear capabilities. And there again, President Trump decided that it wasn't good enough, and he chose to strike.
Mike, what do you make of the response thus far from the international community? A lot of leaders before all of this urged restraint, but now that Iran has lashed out by striking a lot of the other neighbors in the area, I'm wondering if the dynamics have changed and basically how you think the international response is likely to shape up in the coming days and weeks.
Well, first, I think very few governments, other than perhaps Russia, China, North Korea, have any for this regime. And I think over time, other countries are likely, whether they do it publicly or not, they are quietly celebrating or supporting the fact that the regime might change. Of course, it depends on what direction it changes and whether the new regime is another Ayatollah, is it the IRGC, or does this give the opportunity to the Iranian people to have more of a pluralistic democracy over time? And so if it comes out in the latter, it'll be a much better outcome. In the meantime, of course, there's concern about the widening retaliation, the possible regional war, and Iran taking retaliatory steps elsewhere in the world, as they've been known to do in the past. And so there are concerns by other countries. I think that particularly in the region, while the concerns of the neighbors is about the retaliation, all of these countries have wanted to see Iran change, and it seemed very unlikely that the regime of 47 years effectively was going to change of its own accord, and that's what's brought us to where we are today.
Rob, there's probably no other country in the region that has wanted to see that regime change more than Israel. Let me play for you Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in his own words over the years talking about the Iran nuclear threat. Take a listen.
But ladies and gentlemen, time is running out. We have to act. Iraq, Iran, and Libya are racing to develop nuclear weapons. By next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly. if they wanted to do it.
Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time.
Rob, give me your reaction to hearing that and hearing these threats over the course of decades, not just years, not just months, but for decades being told that Iran is at the cusp of getting a nuclear weapon. And then ultimately, as you just said, be on the cusp of getting the most strident deal ever and walking away from it to launch this war.
I mean, really, what you just played, Ayman, makes the point. There's not much to add, and it's been years now, of course.
I mean, I guess my question maybe is it really about nuclear weapons, or was it always about regime change?
I think it's been about both. I mean, I think there has been, on the U.S. side at least, a genuine concern about Iran's nuclear program. I think on the part of the Israeli prime minister, it has been a desire to rid itself of this regime and of using any reason that they could think of to do that. Now, they have their own grievances, but they have tried to convince the U.S. public that Iran was on the verge of acquiring a nuclear weapon, lying about it repeatedly, and trying to drum up support for the war that he has finally achieved. And I'd say, it is quite remarkable. This is probably the first time, at least that I could recall, that the U.S. and Israel are participating together in a war in the region. In the past, the U.S. tried to keep Israel at arm's length for fear of what it would do to the credibility or the reputation of the operation. This time, they're in lockstep, and it says a lot about the state of President Trump's and Prime Minister Netanyahu's relationship.
Michael, what is your concern going forward if the international community is at odds over the reconstruction of the Iranian state after this war?
Well, look, I think right now we should be focusing on, one, what is going to be the new leadership in Iran, what's going to happen to the people of Iran, and minimizing, of course, any collateral damage there. Also,